Hello and welcome to a class with me. My name's Jo Cook and I've been a yoga teacher for 10 years. Normally I teach face-to-face classes in Cumbria in the north of England, but at the moment I'm doing all of my teaching online. So if you normally come to one of my classes, you'll be familiar with what we're about to do. If you don't normally come to my classes, then just follow along. My style of yoga is based on Iyengar yoga because that's the style of yoga that I was trained in. So I do use props such as belts and bricks and blocks. I will give you tips and tricks along the way about what you can use instead if you don't have those kind of props. So let's get started. We're going to begin by sitting cross-legged. For most people, you'll find it more comfortable to sit up on something. I'm sitting on yoga blocks, but you could sit on a cushion, you could sit on a couple of books. If cross-legged doesn't suit you, you can sit any way that is comfortable. The idea of how we start is simply to give ourselves a little bit of space between real life and yoga practice to get into the right frame of mind. So I use my hands to press down just to feel more lift through my body, releasing my shoulders down. And then you can choose where to rest your hands. If your back needs the help, you can keep your hands on the bricks or bring your hands together in the front of you. Close your eyes if that helps your focus. Begin to really notice your breathing. Let yourself feel it come in and go out. And at the same time, turn your attention to the base of this pose. And the base of your pose is always the part of your body that's taking the most weight. So right now, it's my bottom, it's the area that I'm sat on. Take your awareness there and then narrow that down to notice not just the whole area, but what's the detail that you can feel. Can you notice whether you're sat evenly? So is there more weight on one side than the other? Or in fact to the front or the back? And even up anywhere that you feel that you are uneven. At this stage, paying attention and learning how to be sensitive to what you're feeling is more important than creating any particular adjustments. Then also pay attention to sitting as tall as you can without strain or aggression. And make sure that you allow your legs to continue to be comfortable and released whatever position you're in. Notice how you're holding your head. If you need to, lift or lower the chin so your jawline feels level with the floor. And try to bring a greater sense of balance to your head. Your head's quite a heavy object, and the neck and back muscles can sometimes get overworked holding the head. So see if you can find a more balanced position. Then begin to notice your face and your facial features. Beginning at the hairline. If you find any muscle activity or strain or tension in the forehead and the eyebrows, let it go the next time that you breathe out. And then the same with the eyes themselves and the eyelids. And the muscles around the base of the eyes, at the top of the cheeks, where we get smile lines. Let that release. Moving down the face, begin to notice how you're holding your jaw. If you're clenching your teeth, release them so they're slightly parted. If you're able to breathe freely through your nose, we do work with the mouth closed, but it's just a gentle closure. The lips touch, the teeth are parted, the tongue rests. So now there should be a quietness across your whole face. If you lifted your hands into prayer position, rest them back to your legs. Lift your chest to your chin and lower your chin towards the chest. The two don't need to meet, but just lowering your gaze so that when you open your eyes, which you can do any time now, you just have a small patch of floor down there in front of you. And then when you're completely ready to begin, you can lift your head and we'll begin. So we're going to begin with Tadasana or mountain pose. Have your feet placed underneath your hips. Reach your hands down beside you, although only with about 50% effort so that you don't introduce tension in the shoulders. Reach and stretch out with the toes if you can, so you can really connect the feet to the floor. And just like we paid attention to where the weight was across your bottom when we were sat a moment ago, notice where the weight is on the soles of your feet. Now we do want to work really hard on being even. So notice if the weight is more in the front or the back of your feet. Perhaps you're leaning more to the left or the right. As we learn, we increase our sensitivity and that varies day by day, but see what you can see and even up what you can. Create a sense of lift from the front of the toes, so you stay stood up, front of the toes to the front of the ankles, up the front of the shins, lifting the kneecaps, and try and lift all the way to the top of the thighs, right to the front of the pelvis. And even lifting the front of the pelvis so that behind you your tailbone gently tucks into your body. So lift all the way up the front of the legs. Taking care not to push forwards in the front ribs, a lift all the way up the front body. So from front pelvis, navel draws back, up the ribs to the sternum, lifting all the way until the notch of the collarbones reaches up towards your chin. Your chin's level with the floor. And then there's width across the shoulders and a sense of length but descent down the back of the body. So reach down with the shoulder blades, down with the tailbone, heaviness into the heels, life all the way through the body. Now take your arms out to shoulder height or slightly lower. Take care not to raise the shoulders. And in turn, stretch into each finger. So working with maybe your right hand first, feel the thumb, the index finger, the middle finger, the ring finger and the little finger. So there's life all the way to the end of that arm. And then the same on your other side. Thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, little finger. Stretching out right to the edges of our body. Turn the hands upside down. Keep the weight back in your heels, but try to find the bottom edge of your shoulder blades, and as you turn the arms upside down, move the bottom of the shoulder blades in a little more if you can, which will lift your chest. Raise the arms to a diagonal line. Keep the shoulder blades going down. Notice the weight in your heels. Watch not to push forwards in the front ribs. And if your shoulders will let you, bring your hands all the way to parallel above your shoulders. You can look up and see whether you've done that evenly. See if your hands are even. And then bring your gaze back forwards. And release the arms. So we're going to do Trikonasana now, and I prefer to practice with support from my hand. You could use a chair, you could use a brick, this is a yoga brick, you could use a book, something that's stable and solid. Step your feet apart. turn your right foot in, turn your left foot in slightly, your right foot all the way out. Brick is in your right hand, wide arms, again stretching as much as you can with the brick in your hand, stretching out into your fingertips, straight lifted legs. Bring your hand down to the floor, snuggling up behind your calf. Now if that brick isn't high enough for you, then you can pause the video and go and find something taller. If you're using a chair and it's too high for you, so if your hand was on a chair seat, you can bend your elbow and rest your forearm on the chair instead. Look down at your front leg. Make sure that it's fully turned, so the front of that leg fully faces along your mat. And then let's come up, rest the hands, turn your feet back to face the front, swap the brick to the other side. Now you might have a preference to hold the brick or to place it. Do what you prefer. Turn in the right foot and turn out the left foot. Press your feet into the floor, lift and straighten the legs, wide with the arms. Bring your hand down, find that brick or your support behind the leg, lifting up through both legs, weight in both feet. If your shoulder doesn't let you reach out with your arm, you can reach to the side or you can rest your hand. Look down at the front leg, make sure the front of that front leg is facing along your mat. It isn't beginning to turn out towards the screen or towards the front of you. Be open across the chest, and if you are reaching out with your upper arm, really reach out with your upper arm. Do it intentionally. And then stand up. Rest your hands down. Turn your feet to the front, and you can jump or step your feet back together again. Next, Pajbakonasana, which is a related pose to Trikonasana. So wide feet again. Turning in the same way, so left toes in, right foot out, chest faces the front. Begin with straight legs. You can see it's quite a wide stance. Make sure you feel safe on the surface that you're on your yoga mat, hopefully, that you don't feel that you're going to slip. And if you do feel secure, take your feet as wide as you're comfortable to take them. Classically, you need your feet underneath your wrists. Then we're going to bend the front knee and we're going to rest the forearm onto that leg. Hand is facing upwards as if you're holding a tray. This shoulder might want to travel towards your ear, so you need to work to make sure it doesn't travel towards the ear. So roll the shoulder blade down your back. You can place your left hand, this side, top arm, behind your back to encourage this shoulder to stay back, so that the two sides of your chest face forwards. Back leg is straight, reaching the sole of the foot into the floor, and then come up. Turn your feet to the front, bring your feet into the centre and back out again, by all means, between sides if you need to. Straight legs, chest faces the front, forearm is going to rest onto your bent leg. Palm faces upwards, other hand comes behind your back. Straight leg in the back leg, reaching the sole of the foot into the floor. Pressing through the forearm to help turn the chest so that the two sides of your chest face the front as much as possible. And then straighten your legs, turn your feet to the front and bring your feet together. We're going to do a forward bend now, so you can face whichever direction is most helpful. I'm going to turn sideways so you get a side view. I'm going to place my feet hip distance apart. I'm just going to straighten up my mat. I'm going to use bricks, but you could use a chair. Place your hands underneath your shoulders, straight legs, and first of all, we're going to get the weight even between the front and the back of the feet. So lean back slightly so you can feel the weight in the heels, and then keeping the heels nice and solid and heavy on the floor, lean forwards a little more until you feel that there is even weight between the front and the back of the foot. And you can do that a couple of times if you're not sure. You could even take it a little bit too far forwards, so you know what that feels like. And then again, go back and find the middle point. All the while, lift up through your legs and make sure your shoulders are in a comfortable position. So they're resting or reaching back towards your waist, not shortening the distance between shoulder and ear. We want this distance between shoulder and ear to stay long. Lift your tummy button gently up towards your spine to protect your lower back. You don't want to sag down in this area, so just a gentle lift up to protect it. And the notch of the collarbones, where you would have the knot of a tie, reaches forwards to the wall out there in front of you, wherever it is. And then we'll breathe in and come up. So the second time that we do that today, we're going to bring the hands down again. Still pay attention to the weight on your feet, but we're going to bend the knees for a moment, and we're going to make the tailbone reach down and over your bottom that way, so draw the tailbone under, but we're going to lift forwards with the chest as much as possible. Now doing this with knees bent makes it more accessible, makes it a more realistic movement for most bodies. But then once you've got that lift forwards, so what we're trying to avoid is the hunched back position. So lifting forwards with the chest, and then we try straightening out the legs. Notice the interaction between the legs and the back, because the more lifted the legs get, the more challenging it is to keep the back flat, but that's our challenge. Keep your shoulders comfortable. If your neck isn't comfortable reaching forwards, you don't have to reach the chin forwards. You can bring your head back into a neutral position, but still reach the chest forwards. Lifting up through the legs, paying attention to the weight on the soles of the feet. And then we breathe in and come up. Now we're going to do that third time, and the third time, if you're able to go lower in the pose, so for example you can reach the floor and maintain good alignment, then you can do that. If that isn't part of what your body can do yet, then you can simply repeat what we've already done. So I'll face forwards this time because you've seen the pose from the side. So facing forwards, feet hip distance apart, folding, hinging at the hips, come forwards, hands come down, still underneath the shoulders. Officially this is still the half pose because we have straight arms. We're going to reach the chest forward, so still trying to avoid the hunched back position, reaching forwards in the chest, attentive to where the weight is on the soles of your feet, and lifting through the whole of the legs. There's always so much to pay attention to. And we're going to breathe in and come up. We're going to do downward facing dog. And there's a lot of relationship between downward facing dog and Uttanasana that we just did. So feet on all fours to begin with. Hands and knees slightly wider apart than armpits and hips. Spread your fingers so there's a little space between each finger and make your middle finger point forwards. Tuck your toes under, lift your knees off the floor, stretch back with the hips, tuck that tailbone down and under towards the heels so your tummy doesn't push towards the floor. Separate the shoulders away from each other rather than letting them roll in towards your neck, and then straighten out the legs. So we're aiming for a long straight line from your wrists to your hips, and for another straight line from your heels to your hips. Don't worry about getting the heels to the floor, worry more about the straightness of your back and about the lift through your legs. The heels to the floor is just a cherry on the cake. It doesn't need to be part of the pose for you to do a good pose. And then rest down. We're going to go from downward facing dog to upward facing dog. So let me show you how you do that. You are in your downward facing dog position. You want to step your feet slightly further back to begin with. And then you're going to come forwards, keep those toes tucked under and lift up. Now traditionally you would have your feet a little further forward, but this is easier to get into. And then if your back is strong enough, you can lift back up. So being a wide downward facing dog, make that shape now. Feet are at least hip distance apart. Hands are just about shoulder distance apart. Keep your legs lifting up. Pay attention to your front thighs pushing up and back even as you come forwards and through and lift into downward facing dog. So the thighs are lifting away from the floor. Legs are straight, shoulders are moving around to the side of your body. And then if you can't lift up and out of downward facing dog, bend your knees, bring the knees down and go to all fours. If you can lift up, you go from upward facing dog and you lift back to downward facing dog, and then you come to all fours anyway. So we'll try that one more time, going from downward facing dog into the arched shape of upward facing dog. You need to make sure that the legs are strong throughout and that you are trying to lift and open the chest. So try to, if you can do more than one thing at once, try to do those two things. If you can only do one, focus on the legs first of all, because they are very strong and they will support your back. So from your all fours position, lifting up, keep the legs strong. The legs need to push backwards. Even as they come forwards, they lift backwards, right onto the toe tips if you can. You are lifting up from the arms, lifting the crown of the head up towards the ceiling, lifting the thighs away from the floor, even though we've lowered them towards the floor. And then choose the way to get out of the pose that suits you best. And then come back down to your all fours. Now we're going to kneel. We're just going to sit back on our feet. For those of you who find that difficult on the knees, you can take a block or a cushion if you're working with non-traditional props, or you can take 2 blocks to kneel like that. And we're going to see if we can just spread the toes. So the way that we're able to spread the fingers, see if you can spread the toes. Just bring a little bit of life and awareness into your toes. Draw your tailbone down towards your feet. So I'm just going to take the block out to show without the block as well. Interlace the fingers and stretch the fingers inside out. So you turn the hands so that the palms face away from you. Draw the shoulders down. Lift the chest area up and through between the arms. And then release that. Whichever little finger was at the bottom of the pile of fingers, swap so the other little finger is at the bottom. Open your chest, descend your shoulder blades, level up your head, push forwards with the hands, straighten the arms. We're not taking the arms up right now, we're just focusing on being aligned in the shoulders, stretching out the fingers and stretching out the toes. So see if you can also still be stretching the toes like that without introducing cramp, and then release. If it is unusual for you to stretch out your toes, you may find it does give you cramp. You can just release that by opening out the backs of the knees now. So we're going to do a little bit to stretch the toes. We stretch the hands like so. So we're going to tuck the toes under. So if you can see, I am tucking the toes under as if I was going to do downward facing dog, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to take my weight. I can put my hands on the floor in front of me to support me as I go back. I'm going to take my weight, if I can, back towards my heels. My knees are slightly apart. I'm going to make sure I'm not sticking my tailbone that way. My tailbone is that way. pretty much always that way with the tailbone. And if your knees and toes are happy with it, you can sit up and take the weight right back onto your feet. Some of you will find this relatively easy, others you may find it excruciating. It really depends on your feet, and people do vary wildly in how their feet feel. But this is a real stretch for the toes for some of us. It really stretches and opens the equivalent of that part of your toe. You may find that the little toe tries to escape, but just make sure you tuck that under. You can see I'm just drawing it under and sit upright. You may also find that the heels drop in or out, so try to be even on the feet, not letting the heels move either of those two ways. And then we'll release that. Now we're going to try a pose called Malasana, which is essentially a squatting pose. Now again, this is challenging on the knees, and if you have a blanket, which I actually don't have to hand, so I'm going to use a jumper or a sweater, fold it up so it's even but quite bulky. I won't use the sleeves because they're a bit uneven. And you can hold that behind your knees, and then as you go down, the space behind your knees is left open. So this can really relieve pressure on the knees in this position. So you can see this is the approximate position. You probably can't see my feet. Now for many people, it's difficult to keep their heels on the floor. So you want to try it out and see which category you fall into. Do you find that when you go down, the heels ping up and they just are not connected to the floor? So once you've found out whether your heels will stay down on their own or not, you can decide whether to use some equipment. One thing you can use is a yoga block, and you will use that underneath your heels. If you don't have a yoga block, a book will work just as well, or if a yoga block is too thick for you, then you can roll up the end of your mat. So that is another alternative. You need to roll it quite firmly, and it depends on your mat as to how thick your mat is and how well it rolls. But once you've got it rolled, you then use that as a wedge underneath your heels. So prepare your feet as you need, flat on the floor or with something supporting the heels. Take your hands out in front of you, that will help your balance, and also we're going to lift the chest up between the arms, that kind of idea. And then we're going to go all the way down, if you can. So heels are nice and heavy, you don't need to bounce. Supporting the back of the knees with a jumper if you need to, and descending the tailbone towards the floor behind you, but the aim is not to sit on the floor, the aim is to lift the chest, so to have your weight as far backwards as you're able to have it, but lifting the chest. And then you can either stand up from here, or if that feels too challenging on your knees, you can simply put your hands in front of you and bring your knees to the floor and come out of it that way. To stand up, then you will simply stand up. So I will face you the second time that we do that, but you don't need to change your angle. I'm going to work without anything under my heels this time. Hands in front of me. Knees and feet are about hip distance apart. And I'm going to bring my weight down so that I'm trying to close up the gap between my bottom and my heels. This does feel like something of a balance. So you should be fighting to stay balanced, just on the edge of what you can do. Reaching the chest upwards, reaching the tailbone down towards your heels. And then come back up again. Rest your hands down. We're going to prepare for relaxation now. So the first thing we're going to do is just a little counter stretch. So we're going to lie back, and then we're going to draw the knees in, and either knees together or knees apart, whichever you prefer. Drawing your knees in the direction of the armpit. You can hold on top of the shins or behind the knees. And you can see how this is a similar shape to Malasana. I'm a different orientation, I'm not upright, I'm on my back, but it's similar, and it just lets the lower back in particular lengthen out. And then you can bring your feet to the floor. Take your arms beside you, palms facing upwards. If there's any equipment there that you accidentally touch and you don't want to be part of what you're deliberately using, you just move it and then straighten out your legs and allow the feet to flop to the side. Close your eyes and we'll begin Shavasana. Be aware of the weight of your body. And each time that you breathe out, feel the muscles release and rest back more heavily to the floor. Release the weight of the head. Release the weight of your face so it rests onto the bones beneath. Allow your throat to be soft. With the next out breath, spread the shoulders. Feel the heaviness of your body resting on the back of the shoulder blades. Rest the arms on the floor. Allow your tummy to fall back towards your spine. Notice the heavy contact of the tailbone on the floor and the gentle openness at the front of the pelvis as the legs rotate out to the side. Let the large muscles of the thighs rest. Almost feel like they fall away from the bone. Completely passive and at rest. Notice the parts of your calves that connect with the floor. Consciously allow those muscles to release. And finally let the feet be at rest. And we'll rest like this for another couple of minutes without disturbance. it's time to finish. So bring your awareness back into your body, back into your surroundings. The first thing that moves is always your attention, and then we allow small parts of our body to move, maybe the fingers, maybe the toes. Use your instinct to guide you. Eventually make the larger movements of bending the knees, resting the feet on the floor. If you want to, even drawing the knees towards your chest. Roll up onto your right side, cradling your head with your arm. If you're in a bright room, just shade your eyes and open the eyes whilst they're protected. And then roll nearly onto your front so that it's your arms that use their strength to lift you up. And we're finished. Thank you.